Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everybody to the town hall for the Canyon High School feeder area for the Orange Unified School District. We're waiting right now for people to join the meeting, and we will be starting here in just a few minutes with an introduction from the superintendent, Dr. Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Kissel. First of all, I'd like to apologize. I had some issues with my computer, so my camera is not working, but I can see all of you and would like to welcome you to our Orange Unified Master Plan, Facilities Master Plan kickoff for the Canyon High School feeder area, our town hall meeting. And you can see on the introductory slide here that there is a telephone number with a phone ID for Spanish translation if you need that. And I'd like to just thank the team for the incredible work. We've been on this journey for over almost a year and a half now. We started our master planning process last year in 1920. And we had our first study session with the board actually in March 2020, right before we went into this COVID situation. And we've been able, despite COVID, to have a lot of meetings with our master plan committee that has our facilities master plan committee that has been able to meet. We've been able to have our user groups meet and refine the plans. And what we're sharing with you tonight for our Canyon cluster feeder schools is a conceptual design for our schools based on some of the vision and goals that we've set for a future master plan for the district to improve our facilities. So I'm really excited about the work that we've done, and I want to thank our team from LPA and the district staff, Dave Rivera from the business office, as well as Scott Harvey in facilities, and our Ed Services involvement from Kathleen Corella and Joe Irvin. And then I'd also like to acknowledge that we have several board members that are here. We have President Kathy Moffitt, who I think she's going to be joining us shortly, as well as Vice President Chris Erickson, who's going to be joining us. And then we have our clerk. Oh, are you here?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kathy. And Vice President Chris Erickson will be joining us, and Clerk Andrea Yamasaki, Board Member Angie Rumsey, and Board Member Anna Page. So we have 5 of our board members who are here to listen and to engage with our community. We all value what comes out of a town hall meeting, and I see we have 94 participants already signed in, so that's really exciting, and we hope that you'll get a lot out of this meeting, and we're looking forward to gathering input. And if any of you are interested, please go to our website, because we'll have the town halls for the other high school feeder clusters over the next 2 days on Wednesday and Thursday, and the following one is on Wednesday of next week. Is that right, or is it Tuesday? But all the dates are Wednesday. Thank you. So we're looking forward to this process. Our goal is to collect information, and then we'll go back to our committees and we'll work with our site level teams to refine these documents. And then there'll be another study session with our Board of Education to also review all this input. And eventually our board will take action on the facilities master plan. So we're really excited to have all of you here. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Rivera so that he can add anything additional to the work that's been done.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson. I take a lot of pride in the work that's going to be presented to you tonight. There's literally been thousands of hours of commitment from our team and our consultants to help prepare and look at our facilities and how can we create the best learning environment for our students. And that work, along with our consultant of LPA, has been led by Mr. Harvey and his team. So I want to express my appreciation for that work. I'm glad that we have such representation from the board at this meeting because this is really, we all have the same purpose in plan, is that what is the best learning environment for our students. So, Mr. Harvey, can you please introduce the team and have any comments?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Rivera. The only comments that I would make is I just want to point out that this is not done in a bubble where the district just takes a plan and works with our architect and puts out a plan that we believe is the right one. Dr. Hansen mentioned our Facilities Master Plan Committee, which is a group of hardworking individuals that met with us in person at first and then did virtual when we couldn't be in person. And so it's been a big culmination of community involvement. These are the community members that are really ingrained into our schools, are really involved and gave us a lot of good information to go forward in putting the plans together. So this is not just a culmination of the district and our consultant, this is a culmination of the community. We had those involved from anywhere from Chapman University to local businesses, to our friends with the city governments, to multiple people in the parent-teacher organizations throughout the district. So I just want to thank everybody that had a collective, piece of this, and thank you for all your help. We cannot do this without you. We need your input, and it really is going to make a big difference. And this is not the end. There's going to be more opportunity for you to get involved, and really excited for you to hear the details. And I want to point out my staff did a great job on putting together the organization for this. And I want to point out Ima Sierra Guerra, who is kind of our quarterback for the master plan. I really want to say thank you to Ima Sierra and turn it over to E, who that's her abbreviation, who will introduce the LPA team. So thank you very much, and we really appreciate all your help in this journey.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. I really appreciate that. And I also want to thank the Facilities Master Plan Committee, not just for tuning in today and hopefully for our other town halls this week and next week, but just for all the time and effort that you've given thus far. We really need the community effort to make this plan move forward. So I'd like to introduce our host for the evening. LPA Architects are our hosts, and there are consultants who are leading the effort for our master plan. The leadership is Jim Kissel. He is the principal and director of the K-12 Education Studio, and there's a few other associates that are going to be presenting with him today. We have Andrea Pippin, Aaron Runyon, and Sabrina Lehman, who's going to start off our presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. We're so excited to be here tonight, and we're really looking forward to an engaging and sort of productive evening, and share some sort of feedback and thoughts with the team here, and get us going into sort of the next phase. So Andrea, if you could advance the next slide. So just a quick brief overview of our agenda for this evening. I'll spend a couple of minutes sort of walking through the meeting protocols, just sort of tips and tricks on how to make sure that this works smoothly for all of us here. And for those of you that are attending, we're very excited, as we said, and that Dr. Hansen mentioned, we have such a great turnout this evening. We want to make sure that everyone's comfortable and aware of how we're going to sort of move through the process. We'll go through the FMP process summary, spend a few minutes talking about what we've done in the last year, as mentioned before. We'll talk through some of the points of the OUSD vision for innovation and how that relates to some of the diagrams that you'll be seeing tonight, sort of what are some of the big picture vision items that we'll be looking at. We'll look through and talk through some of the ed specs and how those relate, again, to the diagrams that we'll see later on in our meeting, and talk about the school site committee roles and next steps moving forward. And then the bulk of our meeting this evening will really be looking at the draft of the school site diagrams that we'll be presenting to you all today. We're very excited. And so that will be the bulk of this evening's activities. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this evening is really to sort of talk about, set the stage or set the table almost, to talk about what are the goals for the facilities master plan, and really to remind ourselves that this is a long-term plan, that the intent of this exercise, and as the year and a half's worth of work that has gone into it to date, is that we're looking long-term. So initially, when we start this process, we are looking 5 to 10 years down the road. And so I just wanted to sort of highlight for folks on the call this evening that really we're not looking at the short-term reopenings, this is the long-term 5 to 10 year plan. This is the opportunity for us to share with everyone on this call the first sort of pass at the draft site master plan diagrams, and really, as we present them, hear and understand your feedback, and then also provide a framework of how we can continue to gather that feedback moving forward. We'll have an opportunity to sort of address some initial questions if you have, and we'll talk through sort of how logistically that'll work in this this forum, because this is sort of likely new for some of us. And then how are we going to move forward? Next slide. So just some logistical items just to make sure we're all good to go and that we're able to participate and actively be part of the conversation this evening. So if you're able to see the presentation, then you can see the slide here that talks about probably the most important icon that you'll see on your screen is the orange arrow, which is to expand and hide the control panel. And from there, you are able to also raise your hand. So the little hand icon that has a little upward green arrow is the opportunity that if you have something that you'd like to raise your hand, that's the button to click. We will be fielding questions. So there is a questions dialog box at the bottom of that menu where you can type in your questions, and you have the opportunity to enter that in. And then as we go, if it's something that we are able to sort of address in the moment, we will address moving forward, or we will also have a question and answer period at the end. And then we also have a couple of polling questions. The polling questions are really just to sort of make sure that we continue to sort of actively engage everyone on this call. This is certainly not a presentation only. It is really a moment for us to sort of collectively engage and really be part of it in a way that we would normally be if we were all together in the same room. And so we would highly encourage if everyone can participate in the polling questions. You might need to minimize your screen if the webinar is a full screen, but we would love to sort of hear your feedback on those. And ultimately, the most important takeaway of this is that your voice matters, and that this is truly the opportunity to hear from you. So we look forward to an active and engaging evening, and we hope you enjoy the meeting, of course. So next slide, please. So rolling right into our first icebreaker question, which we threw around some ideas internally, what would be a good one, and we thought this has been an interesting past year for all of us. So our first icebreaker question for this evening is, which hobby did you pick up in 2020? Now, Erin will be opening up the polling for us, and so the options that you're able to click on are baking and cooking, not biking and cooking because that might be a little tricky. Hiking and fitness, video gaming, reading, knitting and sewing, gardening, writing, art, and painting. So if you are able to switch over to the poll screen, we will await. We'll probably spend a minute or so just waiting to see those numbers come in.
We actually had to truncate the options a little bit just because GoToWebinar wasn't as robust with their options.
That's good.
So we inserted other.
That's a good catch-all. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
We'll give it just a few moments. So we have 61% of our participants who have voted. We usually like to get it up around 80%, and then we'll go ahead and share our results.
I would say, Erin, as well, the presenters cannot take the poll, correct?
That is correct, Jim. All right, we'll give it another 3 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and close that poll, and we'll view our results. There are two just running neck and neck, which is pretty interesting.
All right. So you can see them actively, correct?
I can see them actively going.
Oh,
Yes.
All right. So you've got a bit of an up on the rest of us. All right.
I do. All right, let's go ahead and close this poll. And I'll share it.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. So neck and neck with baking, cooking, and hiking and fitness.
Yes.
It's sort of one, you can't have one without the other in many ways, I suppose.
I think they can make us some great hiking food. What do you think?
Right. Right. Or you need to do some hiking and fitness after you've done some baking and cooking. So.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
I'll go ahead and hide that poll, and then we can get going with the rest of our presentation. All right, there you go.
All right, so we'll hand it over to Jim to take us into the next slide.
Thank you, Sabrina. So we want to give you now just a brief overview of the master plan process to date. As Dr. Hansen said, we began this master plan in the fall of 2019. So it's been about 1.5 years since we began. And there's really 3 major components or phases to the master plan. There's research or data collection. There is analysis of that information, and then synthesis of that information. And currently, we are in that synthesis phase. So we've spent the last 1.5 years interacting with school site stakeholders, district focus groups, an FMPC committee, as well as the board and other groups within the district and community to gather information. And what we're doing tonight and presenting tonight is the results of that information and those ideas translated into plans or a vision for improvement of the district's elementary and middle school sites. High schools are not a part of our master plan. They were part of a separate process, and they have current projects undergoing right now as part of the district's bond program for improvements at those campuses. So we'll be bringing those high school master plans into our program as they were developed several years ago, and incorporating them into the plan as they were developed. So right now we are at the point where we have put together draft master plan proposals of the various campuses. We always feel that it's better to put a draft out there and then seek input from the community and the school site stakeholders. So there's going to be opportunities for everyone to participate with your local school sites after the conclusion of this town hall. We do expect these draft diagrams to evolve as we get input from the school sites and the community. If we could go to the next slide, Andrea. So just some background about why did the district initiate a master plan. There were some challenges that OUSD is facing. There's older sites with aging infrastructure. There's not been a lot of improvements at the elementary and middle school sites. Some sites are not educationally appropriate or configured for how learning takes place today. And we can see with the pandemic as well that it's representing or forcing change to our educational facilities. There's a potential projected decline in future enrollment. Surrounding districts are rebuilding their facilities and innovating in their programs. So there's more competition between districts and private schools for students. And then the real goal out of all this is becoming ready, as I said, to draw all the draft master plan diagrams for each site. Once we have the diagrams, we will cost estimate them. We are also asking every group that we interact with to elicit priorities of what you think things are most important in terms of moving ahead. And all of these data points will be going to the Board of Education for their ultimate recommendation in terms of the priorities within the master plan for the first projects that may proceed as funding becomes available. If we could go to the next slide. So working with the district stakeholders, there's several guiding principles that have come up as we interacted with everybody and really tried to understand you and your community and what was most important. And so most importantly, and things we want to take into account as part of the master plan is realizing that students are at the center of the district's mission, and that we want to embrace the OUSD EDGE and strategic plan for facilities. We want to engage the community in the process and to foster ownership and support. And this town hall is one of those opportunities to engage the community. We want to develop an actionable long-term plan grounded in the district's strategic vision and built on previous accomplishments and successes. And we want to create an overall goal of the facilities providing a positive student experience through development of innovative, adaptable, high-quality learning environments. And we want to construct equitable, safe, welcoming, and inclusive facilities that cultivate student, staff, and community pride. And most of all, I think we heard clearly from a number of district stakeholders that we interact with, particularly on the Facilities Master Plan Committee, is that we want to promote stewardship through the development of a responsible plan based on integrity and excellence, and that plan wants to be achievable. If we could go to the next slide. So based on those guiding principles and working with the district board, cabinet, and steering committee, several guidelines were developed that have helped to shape us at the program as we move through this process. The district is looking to provide innovation in planning and programs. We want to provide educational options for students within their communities. And so within the Canyon, within the El Modena, within the Villa Park, and within the Orange, we want to provide similar educational opportunities within each of the different communities. And you'll hear more about that as we go through this presentation. The district would like to retain resident students. We would like to expand middle school enrollment, increase capture of private school and out-of-district students, decrease some of the west side, east side student movement that we see currently in the district, and most importantly, as we said, efficient use and good stewardship of the community's dollars through an actionable plan. The next slide, Andrea. So tying all of this back to the district's EDGE, there is a goal within the EDGE strategic plan that talks about goals for developing innovative sites. So responding to those guiding principles and those guidelines that I just reviewed, some of these strategic vision statements include the goal of educational innovation and excellence, a goal of stopping migration of students, a goal of being competitive against neighboring school districts, and a goal of maintaining or growing student enrollment in the district. So you can see that we've incorporated the district's strategic plan into the guidelines for the Facilities Master Plan development. We can go to the next slide, Andrea. And so coming out of that, one of the things that we did to address that innovation is look at categorizing the campuses into a series of tiers or similar categories of scope. So what these tiers are is they translate the district vision for innovative sites into proposals for the various campuses. They organize the sites into similar groupings by similar scopes of work and master plan approach. The tiers develop a unique plan for each campus based on its program and past improvement history. And we recognize that funding for facilities improvements is not unlimited and that the district's culture of sharing will continue. So there will be some sites, just as there are right now in the district, and some programs and facilities that are shared between campuses. What the tiers do not do is they do not infer a gradation of projects based on priority or level of improvement specified. So just because you're in tier 1 doesn't mean you're a higher priority project than a project in tier 3. They don't identify dates for potential improvements. That's really dependent upon funding and the strings attached to that funding as it's secured. They do not dictate an approach to scope or budget differently between the various tiers. Each site is going to get its unique plan representative of the needs of that campus and the overall vision of the district in terms of educational programs and facilities. And it does not create a standard template, but instead promotes choice and variety within each feeder area. So we're looking to provide access to similar educational program opportunities for the students within each of the 4 communities within Orange Unified School District. We'll go to the next slide, Andrew. So some of the planning assumptions that we've been using is, first of all, around that equity and choice question and providing educational opportunities within each of the communities. There are magnet campuses being developed, which have a district-wide draw, similar to the McPherson current program. And there are academy campuses within each of the communities that may have a specialized program, but draw within that local feeder community. The 3 tiers of improvements or similar categories of scope include Tier 1, magnets and academies, Tier 2, targeted enhancements. So this includes modernization as well as augmentation of libraries or multi-purpose rooms or other facilities that might be deficient at the campus. And then Tier 3 of scope is modernization. Some of the planning guidelines we're using as we look at the campuses, and these are based on the demographics. Our elementary schools are either 420 or 630 students in size in terms of the master plan. K-8 schools are at 900, and middle schools are at 700 or 900 students, depending upon the demographics for that area. If we go to the next slide. So we are, back one. So we are on the first town hall tonight for the Canyon feeder area. There is a town hall tomorrow night for the Orange feeder area, one on Thursday night, for East Orange, one on Thursday night for Central and West Orange, and then one next week for the Villa Park and North Orange area. So what I'll do right now is turn it over to Joe Irvin with the district to talk about the Canyon High School feeder area and how the campuses in that area may evolve in the future, as well as give a highlight into the maps for the other 3 communities. So Joe, take it away.
Thank you, Jim. If you take a look at the Canyon High School feeder pattern map here, you can see the legend off to the right. Each of our high school attendance boundaries have a magnet school in these innovative programs. So for our Tier 1 magnet school for the Canyon High School area, we are looking at Crescent for a TK through 8th biomedical magnet, and you can see it there. It also has that little red icon, which is a proposed new gym for that feeder area. And then we have our Tier 1 Academy, which would be Running Springs, which would be TK through 8th grade, International Baccalaureate Academy, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. So that would be our academy in this feeder pattern. And then we have our Tier 2 targeted enhancement schools. So all of these sites would receive a modernization. We have Anaheim Hills Elementary School, which is our TK through 6th grade, and then Canyon Rim Elementary School would also be our targeted enhancement, receiving additional capacity. And then our Tier 3 modernization are the other 3 schools in purple there. We have Imperial Elementary School, Canyon Hills, and El Rancho Charter Middle School. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the innovative possibilities at these Tier 1 schools. So our first one is Crescent TK through 8th grade. An example of an innovative program that we could bring to Crescent would be a biomedical themed magnet school. So McPherson currently is our magnet school in the district, and before my current position as an executive director with the district, I was the principal of that kinder through 8th grade STEM magnet school for 6 years. So the idea here is to look at a magnet theme program that would become an innovative beacon for Orange County. So looking at our biomedical theme, we would look at adding approximately 200 students, 7th and 8th grade, 100 each grade, opening up Crescent's current attendance boundaries, giving them the option for middle school in Anaheim Hills and beyond. Entrance in the middle school portion of Crescent would be lottery based. So those students attending Crescent would be given some type of priority, and then we would go through those same open enrollment priorities after that. General open enrollment in the district, and then to the inter-district transfers. Middle school students for 7th and 8th grade would rotate through a 7-period day, just like our traditional middle schools and McPherson's K through 8th grade. So students would have math, science, language arts, history, PE, and 2 electives. We would be focusing those electives, if we go with the innovative biomedical program, into that biomedical lens. And that would eventually lead to Canyon High School's patient care program. We would look at having a full-time STEM teacher to be utilized both in the secondary and elementary school, so that this teacher could not only teach some secondary classes, but would also be doing biomedical education pull out for our elementary students. Examples of those biomedical electives could be a 6th grade design and modeling and medical detectives course, a 7th grade principles of biomedical science, and 8th grade human body systems. We would be looking for partnerships to develop that community of that biomedical lens. An example would be working with CSA, California Society of Anesthesiologists, to bring in business and medical individuals that could help develop our students' knowledge of the biomedical pathway. We would have after-school programs that would also be developed around that magnet focus. An example could be a scrub club and an annual health fair that could be run by the school as a community event. And again, all subject matter will be taught through that biomedical lens. We did the same thing at McPherson. Everything was taught through that STEM lens. Even in language arts, we would try to bring in that STEM focus, and we could do the same thing with Crescent. So that's an example of an innovative program that we can bring to Crescent. Next. Running Springs was our other Tier 1 school in the Canyon High School attendance boundary. Again, we'd be looking at moving from a current TK to 6th through a TK to 8th grade International Baccalaureate Academy. This would add approximately 200 students, 100 to 7th, 100 to 8th grade to the site. The boundaries opened for 7th and 8th grade students, giving them the option for Anaheim Hills and beyond. 6th through 8th grade students could rotate through 7-period day, just like we were talking about at Crescent. They would have math, science, language arts, history, PE, and 2 electives. Again, with an IB focus, those electives would be probably in the area of world languages or world cultures. Students would complete a middle years program personal project. This is part of the International Baccalaureate experience. Orange Unified envisions a community event in which students could explain their self-driven practical explorations, so that they would be able to present this to the community, and the community can hear about these projects that our students have been working on. We would like to have the school participate in pen pal schools to help students have a global perspective and work with students that are at international schools around the world. And then the ultimate goal would be to become an IB World School. So again, this is just another example of an innovative program. Running Springs is already working on becoming a TK through 6th grade International Baccalaureate, so it would just be adding those 7th and 8th grade students. We also have the maps, just so that you have this information with our other attendance boundaries. So for our El Modena High School feeder area, we have our Tier 1 magnets. That would be McPherson would continue to be the magnet for this attendance boundary. And we have a Tier 1 academy, that is Jordan Academy, which is currently our dual immersion program for both Spanish and computer science. You can see that we do have a new gym for the feeder pattern area, which would be to be built at McPherson. We have our Tier 2 schools with targeted enhancements, and those are in green. You can see here that we have our Esplanade Elementary is TK through 6. We would be expanding the administration building, library, and library resource center. We would have a new MPR and both pre-K and after-school spaces. La Vida Elementary School would be receiving a shared MPR with McPherson, and then Panorama would be having a rebuild as a new multi-story campus and a new library and MPR. And then we have our Tier 3 modernized schools, which would be Linda Vista Elementary, Chapman Hills Elementary, Prospect Elementary, Parkside Education Center, and Santiago Charter Middle School. Next, we have the Orange High School feeder area. We would be looking at a Tier 1 magnet at Yorba Middle School. So Yorba could become our kinder through 8th grade arts magnet, excuse me, similar to McPherson, drawing from a lottery. Tier 1 academy would be at California Elementary. California Elementary is currently TK through 5th. So we would be continuing our Apple Distinguished School program as well as our dual immersion Spanish program at that site. And then we have our Tier 2 targeted enhancement schools. That includes Cambridge Elementary School with a new NPR, pre-K and after school spaces. Fairhaven Elementary School, which is TK through 6 with a new library, new NPR, PK and after school spaces. Richland High School with a possibility of having a new gymnasium, which is a shared space. And Sycamore Elementary School with expanded administration, expanded library, and PK after school spaces. And then the Tier 3 modernized schools would be Handy Elementary School, Palmyra Elementary School, West Orange Elementary School, and Portola Middle School. And finally, we have our Villa Park High School feeder pattern with our Tier 1 magnets. That would be our Taft K through 8th grade world language magnet. And this would house some of our dual immersion programs. And then we have our Tier 1 Academy, which was Olive TK through 6, and that is our Avid Academy. Our Tier 2 targeted enhancement schools include Knoll Canyon, which would receive additional capacity. The library would take over their NPR with a new NPR, after school spaces, and addressing the walls and acoustics. Serrano Elementary School with a shared NPR with Saravilla, as well as after school spaces, and Saravilla Middle School with a new gymnasium, NPR, and shared space with Serrano. And then the Tier 3 modernized schools for this attendance pattern would be Villa Park Elementary School and Fletcher Elementary School. Okay, I think I'm going to hand it over to
Yes,
Andrea.
thank you, Joe. Thank you. All right, a lot of good information there. Now we're talking about how do we continue to lay all this information that we've been gaining onto the school sites. One very important piece of that are the educational specifications. These are a way of kind of standardizing each piece, each facility type that goes onto a school campus, setting some design standards for when that project moves forward, when funding is solidified and a project is then selected to move forward. This set of standards can be provided to the architect who can engage with the school site once more to make sure that the project is appropriate and has some equity or parity district-wide. So these ed specs really set that equity and parity standard. They also speak to some of these big changes that have been happening. So what you'll see is that every school site, in order to maximize some flexibility, you'll see a transitional kindergarten space at every school site, even if there's not one existing, but to provide some spaces for an influx if a TK is needed at that site. Preschool also follows the same model. You can see the diagram there to the left. So when you see transitional kindergarten or preschool on a school campus, or kindergarten for that matter, you can anticipate a design similar to this, where there's a large floor space, adjacent toileting facilities, a shared workroom, and storage, and locating these spaces adjacent to the kinder play area. When we look at special education spaces, we also want to make sure that those students are properly supported, and having the right space is important to do that. So at every campus, regardless of their SDC needs, we are providing at least one facility for moderate to severe programs. So that space would have a large floor space, a focus room for decompression, or de-escalation if a student needs to de-escalate, storage, and toileting facilities with a lift. And so as we talk about flexibility with the campuses, even if a site doesn't have the need for a moderate to severe SDC room, they could use this for kindergarten or a typical any grade level class if they would so like, but they have that ability to utilize that for additional purposes. This learning resource model is probably one space that we get the most questions on. So what this is pulling the resources that are typically scattered at a school campus, the psychologist's office, the speech office, other therapists, or these other student support uses, RSP, that typically get the best closet that a school site has. This learning resource center groups those facilities together into a suite of offices that's purposefully built to serve this function with confidentiality, room for small groups, room to meet one-on-one, and also this classroom-sized room for, which can morph into whatever that school site needs. It can be a sensory room or it can be something else. And these ed specs show a flexible partition down the middle in case that needs to be broken into smaller spaces. So you'll see this at every school site as well, this LRC, or Learning Resource Center. Just a quick note on the Media Center. In these draft proposed diagrams, you won't see the label of library, you will see Media Center. It doesn't mean books are going away, it just means we're evolving the library to be more tech savvy, a little more tech rich, without losing the books, of course. And so sizing the library or Media Center correctly based on the student enrollment will be a majority of the reason why if we show a new or reconfigured space for Media Center. Collaboration spaces are also a part of that, bringing students together, really celebrating this flexibility of space. Collaboration zones are adjacent to the classrooms and can serve as an extension of the classroom. And depending on the space that the site has available, you may see them in one or two ways. One would be an interior collab space. That would be kind of like a hallway, but wider with flexible furniture, technology out there. Again, it's an extension of that classroom space with visibility into the classroom so that the teacher doesn't lose track of anybody. They can bring full classes into that space. That space can serve, one student, small groups, or larger. They can also happen outdoors, so enhancement to the outdoor spaces in between classroom wings or right outside existing classrooms. So when you see exterior or outdoor collab, this is what we're talking about, is that enhanced outdoor space to support learning. Onto each campus as well, you'll see VAPA, that's visual and performing arts spaces. And depending on whether you're elementary, K-8, or middle, you'll see varying levels of visual and performing arts spaces. For the elementary, it's 3 rooms, one for art, one for orchestra or strings, one for bands, basically 1 art room, 2 music rooms, but this gives them a home base. This gives them, again, a purposefully built, flexible space with ample storage and a larger than typical sized classroom to support those needs, ideally adjacent to a multi-purpose room or some sort of performance space. At the K-8 level, now that we have middle school students introduced onto campus, that space beefs up a little bit more with some practice rooms introduced and instrument storage. And again, this would want to be adjacent to that NPR performance space. At middle schools, now middle schools can have a variety of elective spaces, so these ed specs provide some flexibility there. You can have a focus on arts, 2D, 3D, and digital art spaces with some shared project material storage. You can also have music, drama, or music and drama focus. Again, that orchestra string space, band space with instrument storage and practice rooms, and a drama space. Again, these would ideally be adjacent to a performance area if you're incorporating these drama and music focused VAPA rooms. Another space to hit on is the innovation lab. So this is kind of takes place of what typically may be a computer lab. This is more hands-on, it's more messy, it's more project-based. And when paired with an after-school program, this after-school program space with toileting facilities and storage provides that hub for that after-school. And then if it's located adjacent to that innovation lab, that after-school program can utilize those 2 spaces without needing to take over a teacher's classroom after normal school hours. So you'll see this incorporated onto every campus. They may not always be right next to one another, but when we were able to, we tried to co-locate those 2 so they can share the facilities. Okay. I imagine there have been some questions coming through. Let me see. If anyone wants to raise their hand and ask a question, now would be the time. I see Jim's jumping on. Did you want to?
Yeah, there's been a couple of questions that have come in. One was, hello, I heard a portion that this was a long-term plan for the next 10 years, but missed when these schools would move into the tier identification system. And what's the schedule for that? And the answer to that question was the district has not yet identified when the transitions or improvements will occur. We're right now working on what is the vision for the improvement of the facilities. Then once that's complete, the next step would be to talk about when those transitions could occur. Another question that we heard is what was tier 3 again? And tier 3 is the modernization scope of work. And we're using the state budget formula on how they budget modernizations for the sites that are eligible for state funding, with 60% of those dollars potentially coming from the state and 40% of local funding. And then there were a couple new questions about where can we view the proposed school feeder maps. And everything is going to be available on the OUSD website under the facilities tab following this meeting. And then the last question, I'll turn this over to Scott. And this question is, does the district have a deferred maintenance plan, and how often are the school sites generally maintained? If you want to respond to Zara's question there.
Yeah, we do have a 5-year plan, deferred maintenance plan, and we do take it annually to the board for approval. So if you look on our website, on our facilities and planning website, there is a tab there for deferred maintenance. And you can see our last presentations of what was proposed and what was completed over the last 5 years. We've spent quite a bit of money on deferred maintenance over the last 5 years, over $20 million to renovate classrooms, mostly at our elementary school sites and our middle schools, because we were doing Measure S was starting up and now it's actually being completed. But that's what we utilized the deferred maintenance monies for over the course of the last 5 years. And so that's been a successful program, and we reboot the 5-year plan every year. So that is the answer to the question.
Great, thanks, Scott. We've got 2 other questions here. One is, does a school, tiered for modernization, get their buildings upgraded to include spaces described here, or are old buildings being knocked down and rebuilt? And in the modernization category, generally what we're trying to do is to reconfigure or modernize and reconfigure spaces within the building to support the program areas that Andrea talked about. So as much as possible, we try to reconfigure existing spaces to be very conscious of the budget. But in rare cases, when a building has reached the end of its useful life, there is some very selective demolition. An example of that was the Panorama site, where it's challenging due to that campus to expand those buildings. Again, will a copy of the materials be shared, available after this town hall? And it definitely will be shared. They're on the district's facilities tab on the website. We have a parent from Canyon Hills where all the students are disabled. Are we going to meet with the school and see exactly what they need? We'll talk about that more in a minute, but we are definitely sending all of the master plan proposals back to each individual campus, and we will be meeting with the school site committee and principals from that campus to get comments. We also have had a principal survey that went to every school and every principal within the district, as well as teacher and staff surveys that have been completed through this process.
And I'll just add on to that, that anytime we do any upgrade to a facility, whether it's modernization or we're taking buildings down and completely rebuilding them for new construction, we have to follow the strict guidelines of the Division of the State Architect, which is our governing body for our plans. And we have to meet a certain standard for accessibility for students that may have disabilities. So that's a big part of it. So the big part of modernization is not just making the building look good, but making it accessible for those that may not have the easiest time accessing our facilities at the current time.
Great. Thank you, Scott. A couple more questions here. As will all schools K-8 receive the proposed new spaces? Yeah, we're trying to, even at all the schools within all the tiers, provide as many of the program spaces as possible. The one exception being the multi-purpose rooms and the gyms, where there is that culture of sharing among the district. So that is something that is being phased into over time. Another question, this is a fabulous plan. Will there be a long-term for the high schools to retain the students from this plan that will be attracted to the district? Thank you for that compliment. And the high schools are going in to the master plan per the master plans that were developed as part of their previous processes. So there are improvements at the campuses as part of those master plans that are not being completed under the current bond program. Another question, I'll turn this over to the district. If TK magnet schools are created, will El Rancho be okay with losing those potential students? And if someone from the district would like to answer that question.
I think what our intent is, I know Mr. Irving's on also, our intent in doing these programs is for us to actually get more students into the district so that there's enough students not only in El Rancho, but also students in our proposed K-8 programs. So that's what, attract and retain is providing these excellent programs so that we can bring new students in, primarily those in our private school sectors that we know we have plenty of private schools around the area. And Mr. Irvin may want to add to that also.
Yeah, I was going to say we also have, we are also looking to retain students even outside of the district. So our goal is to bring in students not only from within our boundaries, but outside of our boundaries, because we want to have innovative programs that are unique in the county.
And Jim, what I could add to that is within our district, we have one of the largest districts, most populated districts with private schools. So we have approximately 4,000 kids within our district boundaries that attend private schools. And if we go 1 or 2 miles outside of our boundaries, there's approximately another 10,000 students that are enrolling in private schools. So when we're referring to attract and retain, this is a very dense population community that do not have kids in private school, and we're providing them an option to look at our facilities, look at our programs, and for them to be interested in what we have to offer here.
Great, thank you, David. Another question was, is there a schedule for modernizations and new construction? Again, the master plan is identifying the need. There is not a schedule right now. That would be the next step following the completion of the master plan. Another question here is, thank you for the presentation. I'm not sure where this fits in, but is this the forum to discuss status of current high school improvements? We have been trying to figure out plans for a shade structure, Anaheim Hills Elementary School improvements. We've been trying to figure out plans for a shade structure. I need to know what PTA should allocate versus what district funds are available. And Scott, I'll turn that over to you.
Sure. I had a feeling if this is the Canyon area that the Anaheim Hills PTA would be asking me that question. It's funny that happened. But thank you so much for the PTA that's been involved in this discussion about the shade structure. Originally, we were going to look into a solar shade structure for the kindergarten area and integrate that into our phase 2 solar, which we're proposing at the next board meeting. We did an MOU for that solar, and now we're working into the actual contract. But because of the expense of these customized structures that will have to go on campus and other things, and because of the project return on that, we have decided to pull that back in terms of making it a solar shade structure. But our commitment to Anaheim Hills still exists. in what we talked about with them. So the kindergarten shade structure is actually on the proposed deferred maintenance plan, which we will be taking to the board for their consideration on January 21st next week. So that is in the plans, as well as replacing shade structures and upgrading shade structures throughout the district. We kind of did inside was our deferred maintenance plan. Now we're forming to the outside and getting some of the shade structures and playgrounds and whatnot replaced. So that's the next progression. So thank you for that question. We didn't forget about you. Thank you so much, Anaheim Hills.
Great, thanks, Scott. The next question is for Knoll Canyon. I understand TK was in the works for 2021, but no longer is. Any updates as to when TK for Knoll Canyon will develop?
We it doesn't look like we will have enough students for that program, but depending on enrollment each year, it could change. So we will look at enrollments at the beginning of the year, and if we need to add programs due to high numbers, that's something we would explore.
Great, thanks, Joe. Another question here is, why are we planning on improvements to every campus when our district is in declining enrollment? And I think I would turn that over to David Rivera with the district.
Yeah, Jim, and this is good, Marie. I'd also like to just say a few words about this, that we've been doing extensive demographic studies, and those discussions are actually aligned with the facilities master plan. So the decision points about whether or not any of this, modernization and some of the building will occur will be made by the Board of Education in conjunction with those studies about demographics. So as was said by Mr. Kissel, there's no decisions made, there's no timeline. So this is a master plan that talks about the feasibility of each site, but as we go into the planning and the feasibility of each, all of that has to be taken into consideration. Mr. Rivera, you want to add anything to that?
Yes. The focus of the master plan is to look at what improvements are necessary for programmatic purposes. And the last time we had a master plan update was in 2003-04. We did one at the high school level, but the elementary and middle school level has not been updated for 15, 16 years. And for us to seek external funding, the state has now changed the law where we would have to have a master plan in place if we're asking for state participation in assisting us in paying for these projects. So we need to know what are the needs at each site, and certainly maintain this. And it's been my practice that we maintain this every 5 years, that we go back, look at all the demographic information, look at the data, and keep these updated. Unlike what we've done in the past, which has not have been updated. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. That's why it's taken a year and a half at this point to get us to this point, of the report. So I think it's important that we know what the needs are and that we focus on what those needs are, so that way all our students have equitable facilities and equitable services and provide the best learning environment. And then we figure out on how this can get funded after the report is developed.
Great, thanks, David. Another quick question. Didn't Crescent have 7-8 in the past and closed due to attendance? I don't know, Joe, if you want to take that.
Crescent long ago did have 7th through 8th. In fact, that's where the other building we're looking to possibly utilize for middle school is located. So in terms of the attendance, I can't really answer that question. We're just looking what we can do now to innovate.
Great, thanks, Joe. This one question's about Knoll Canyon, which at present has a common space that 10 classrooms open into a library. So, it's also an NPR. So how would the plans address that? We'll be addressing that in a moment as Andrea goes through the plans. And so you'll see some ideas that we have. As we said, these are draft proposals for each of the campuses, and we do expect them to change. They are also just conceptual plans to establish a budget. They are not final architectural diagrams or architectural projects. So as funding is identified for a specific project, the school site committee would be engaged and these concepts would be flushed out into a final campus design per the budgets established in the master plan. Another question is, will GATE programs be sent to the Academy's magnets? Maybe Joe?
I would say the GATE programs are going to be still located within the each of the high school feeder patterns. So some might exist in an academy or magnet depending on space allocation. So I know like Crescent right now holds the gate magnet for Anaheim Hills Elementary, and we would be looking at retaining that there for the TK through 8th grade program. So it would just depend on the individual programming as we look forward.
Great, and another question for you, Joe. Will the current enrichment programs continue, or will OUSD start with new in this tier system?
I'm not sure what it means by enrichment programs. We would be continuing to look at both in school and outside of school enrichment programs. And with the academies and magnets, we would be trying to find those programs to align with the magnet focus.
Great. And then a question, is the district considering a veterinarian program for students at some point, along with the other things that you're considering?
Yeah, I think that part of the idea was behind the biomedical would be that it would be housing a whole bunch of different concepts under that biomedical umbrella. So veterinary would definitely be something that could fit into there and would be a great fit with that if we were doing a health fair or something like that, bringing in medical veterinary concepts to that as well.
Great. That it looks like I've gotten through the questions here. Andrea, I know we're coming up on the time when we need to move to the site diagrams. Are there any last individuals that want to raise their hand, ask a question? And continue to submit them through the questions portal, and we'll answer as many of those as we can.
And I've got it later in the presentation, but also want to note that this is just the beginning of the conversation where you get to ask the questions, get to make these comments. Following this, and we'll get to that slide in a moment, but just briefly before we move on from the Q&A, you will be able to engage as a school site committee with your principal and with the folks at your school site around these plans, meet on them and get that running list of questions, and then we'll meet one-on-one in a couple weeks to get all that feedback from you. So we really want to make sure we get all your questions documented, and as you ask them in the chat or in the question window, we'll be able to have that record copy and possibly follow up with a Q&A or have a Q&A portion on the website to address some of these questions before those one-on-one meetings. Shall we move on, Jim?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, so we have our next poll question. Now we want to ask you guys, and I don't know if Aaron has abbreviated this one a little bit, but now that it's 2021, what are you most looking forward to doing? So we'll switch over. So are you really wanting to get vaccinated, take a trip, visit friends and family? Here, I guess I better see how the formatting's going. Volunteer, see a live concert or sporting event. We've got
You mean read more about the facilities master plan?
Yes, isn't on there, I know, right? It looks to be about as popular as volunteering at this point. No one's clamoring to volunteer at the moment, but take a trip and get vaccinated. That seems to be the top two at the moment.
I think those are pretty much going to go hand in hand.
I think so.
I think we all need that right now.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be nice. So we're at about 72%. We'll give it just a few more seconds and we'll go ahead and close that out. All right, doesn't look like it's really moving, so let's close it and we'll show the results.
I think we're set. Yeah, take a trip, just get out of the house, go do something.
Okay, so there are our results.
Great, thank you.
All
So
right.
Andrea, I want to go back and let's walk through the plan for each of the campuses.
Go. Of course, before we do, I touched on this just a moment ago, but if you're here as part of a school site committee member, your role is to continue to review these diagrams and with your fellow school site committee members and with other community members. If you are part of that conduit of receiving information from other folks who may not be on this school site committee with that larger school community, and we'll review the diagrams in just a couple more slides. But we're also looking to solicit input on the diagrams from any stakeholders, like I said, outside of the school site committee between now and mid-February. We'll send the principals a packet of information, which will have a questionnaire that can help guide your conversations in between now and mid-February. Part of that questionnaire includes top 3 priorities. So way back at the beginning of this process, the principals were asked of their top 3 priorities. Now that we've come this far and we see some solutions presented in front of them, those priorities may change, or you may be able to identify a project and say, yes, this is my #1 priority. So in mid-February, principals keep a lookout for a one-on-one meeting with us where all of this information that you'll have gathered will be fed back to us from you. So I'll review the diagrams before we dig in. Specifically, there are a few things to take note of. If you see a solid color, that means modernization. So an update of the finishes, flooring, walls, ceilings, could be lighting. A single hatch means that space is being reconfigured. It is an existing building, and that reconfiguration means the walls are shifting and changing around to make it maybe from 2 classroom spaces into that learning center, for example. If you see a white space with a colored outline, that is new construction.
And I would say, Andrea, some people that know the sites intimately may realize that the modernization color is on spaces that have been modernized. And I can think of the finger wings at Lamson as an example of that. Modernization encompasses a lot of different things, some of which is also technology and other upgrades to some of the backbone systems that are improved continually over time. So modernization doesn't necessarily mean we're tearing something up and modernizing it again when it's been done, but there still could be some cost associated with some improvements to a space that was previously modernized. So I just wanted to clarify for that as when people look at the diagrams.
Yes, good note. Do want to be good stewards of the district's funding. So again, next steps, how can you participate if you're not already part of the school site committee and you'd like to further dive into these diagrams and express your opinion? Get in touch with your school site, with the principal, or maybe you know someone on the school site committee. Get in touch. If there are principal coffees already standing, these kind of standing meetings already on the calendar, it's nice to piggyback this process onto those already calendared meetings. So so there's an option for you. And think long-term. Again, this is a 5 to 10 year process here, master plan diagram. So thinking long-term, past COVID, what does your site need, and how does it support Orange Unified and its program vision and this EDGE, excellence, dedication, genuine, efficient strategies. So getting into the diagrams themselves. I'll do a little bit of zooming in. I'll try not to make anybody too dizzy here, but we'll start off with Anaheim Hills. We'll go elementary school, K-8, and then the middle schools. It was mentioned earlier that the high schools already have a master plan in place. That was done in a different process. This process is focusing on the other sites. So as we start with Anaheim Hills Elementary, we see the existing diagram. And I'm going to zoom in just so folks can see the school site core here. We see the VAPA, or those visual performing art spaces, are in portables. So portables typically have this dashed line around them. this dashed line also shows shade structures or overhangs. So we'll try to be clear. So in this, our first pass of this proposal incorporates some interior collaboration spaces. Remember, these are spill out spaces that can act as an extension of the classroom. We have admin as it exists, receiving modernization. The library, now termed Media Center, here with an adjacent Learning Resource Center, that hub of support services for students. That collaboration area for the existing classrooms on this side of the wing, and a collaboration area for classrooms on the other side. As we accommodate the full program at the site, we have a transitional kinder and kinder. We needed one more kindergarten classroom. So here's new construction with kindergarten, that innovation lab, and after school, so paired together as mentioned before, working hand in hand, and 3 visual and performing arts spaces built new since they were in portables before. Existing NPR receiving modernization. This lunch shelter, I believe, is new already, but this existing kitchen, and that should be relabeled, is now being built new, so it accommodates the appropriate size of kitchen and serving area. You'll also see some improvements to the ground plane with new play areas for upper and lower primary at the edge of the hard courts, and new rubber surfacing at the kinder play area. There will be things that we'll have missed, and we'll admit that. There may be things that we got totally wrong or totally right, but this is the information that we want to know. And as we overlay input and comments that happen between now and in the future, you'll see things like, we understand you have trouble with this public hiking trail. So at this point, actually, this is a really important thing to note. At this point in a master plan, or what the master plan does, and these diagrams do, is it sets a cost. These are used for cost estimating, so we can show an improvement to the area here by this public hiking trail, that then that solution can be determined working with the school site and working with the district to determine the appropriate method of treating that area so that it is safe for the school and safe for the students. But these improvements, especially siting of a building, this isn't a final design. This is really to inform the cost of the master plan. Jim?
And I was going to say, yeah, that public hiking trail is exactly the kind of information we want to learn from the school site committees, because you know your sites best. And in the one-on-one meetings, we'll talk about strategies by which we can address those concerns and modify the plan accordingly to project appropriate costs. And Andrea, I was thinking maybe we can go through all the plans and then ask for the questions on any particular site at the end.
Okay. And I know we're running, long on time, so I'll try to go through quickly, but get the information out there. So bear with me.
We'll be sending each of the sites, as Andrea mentioned, a packet of information that we've shared today, as well as a board with the proposed diagram on it to post at the school site.
Yeah, so look for that information. If you're a principal on the call, look for that information. Most likely, I believe, end of next week, we'll be able to, once all the town halls have wrapped up, we'll be able to hand that information over.
And we'll be joining the principals meeting next week for about 15 minutes to give a little more detailed information and answer questions.
Yeah. All right, Canyon Rim Elementary is the next site up. We see a lot of portables towards the back on the hard courts, etc. So master plan proposal, I'll start at admin or the front office here. We're expanding the library to take up what is an existing computer lab now, but making sure that that square footage of the library or media center space is closer or meets the ed spec more closely. Nearby that, taking over this existing building for the Learning Resource Center to get them out of the portables. Building new kindergarten classrooms back here and just kind of flipping this kindergarten play space, basically leaving it in place, but building out new kinder and transitional kinder classes here. The existing classrooms would be modernized, and continuing this classroom back would be a new construction with your 3 VAPA spaces, after school and innovation lab pair, and to pick up the balance of classrooms that we needed, 2 additional new classrooms within that new construction. So as we went through and into these diagrams, it's more cost efficient to build new specialized spaces rather than reconfiguring an existing space, since as you do that, you displace classrooms and need to build more. So this, in building the specialized spaces new and modernizing existing, we're trying to be responsible with the dollars. So on the balance of the site, you have play fields, hard court, and in these outdoor areas in between the classroom wings, some enhancement for an outdoor collab. And I will move on to Imperial Elementary. This one, a very nice 70s design, open concept, which turns out to be very loud. So our initial solution here is to take over that interior space, to keep the classrooms at the exterior, take over the interior space for your shared student spaces. So your multi-purpose room with attached innovation lab, existing classrooms on the exterior there would become your VAPA programs. Shared with the NPR would be your media center, and then the learning resource center off here in the corner. Some improvements to the admin spaces for faculty lounge and faculty work, so reconfiguring, reworking that space for a better design, providing some interior circulation, so we do have some sound barriers between spaces. Reconfiguration here for kitchen and serving area. And again, to pick up the balance of classrooms that we lost from those interior renovations, we have a new classroom wing over here with your kinder, preschool, TK, STC, and like I say, the remainder of classrooms with toilets and interior collabs in there, and enhancements to the ground planes at the kinder play yard, hard courts, and play fields going back. And it looks like a new lunch shelter here close by that kitchen. Okay. Orange pre-K, now here's maybe the biggest change happening in this feeder, or proposed in this feeder, is this thought of the Orange pre-K site. So when we talk about inclusion, getting students back to their home and neighborhood school, this site would now become part of or unified with the existing Crescent Elementary site to become one unified site for that that K8 magnet, that biomedical magnet. So I'll start, we have the existing admin for Crescent Elementary here. That whole building we're showing is being reconfigured so it can accommodate all admin uses for that K8 magnet. I'm going to jump over to this side of campus. What used to be that orange pre-K is now the lower primary grades. So kindergarten and SDC PK and transitional kinder here surrounding the kinder play yard. You'll see a variety of modernization, reconfiguration to make those appropriate kindergarten rooms with toileting and storage and workrooms, and a little bit of new construction added on to this building for to house all of your kindergarten rooms surrounding that kinder play yard. Your classrooms are getting modernized, and then in the middle of these buildings being reconfigured into collaboration areas so that those classrooms can spill out into the shared common space. We did have to squeak another classroom in here, but there's ample space for that SDC program room. The existing admin on this side at Orange PK, we felt it was a pretty far walk for admin over, from this side of campus. So leaving this existing admin space to serve as a kind of satellite administration functions for the lower grades. As we walk along the promenade towards the other side of campus, we see some shared spaces in new construction, a media center, innovation lab, and your 3 VAPA spaces, outdoor collab area. So some really rich, maybe it's an amphitheater, maybe it's, just some really fun ways to get together as small groups or large groups. It could also support this NPR too with that adjacency to an outdoor collab. When we get onto this side of campus, we see some reconfiguration to incorporate interior collaboration rooms so that all classrooms have access to that interior shared space. Some improvement to the ground plane in between the finger wings and all through the quad. Improvements or reconfiguration to accommodate science, your large elective space for biomed. The Learning Resource Center here near admin, and another large elective down here with your after-school program in a modernized space here. And I'll note this says potential future gym, but you may recall going back to the maps that this is the site that would have the shared gym for the feeder pattern. So that's something that I've noted too that we already need to revise. And since we did propose this site for the new construction, we're looking at this area down here south of the hard courts to accommodate that displaced staff parking lot. And so when you get the plans, we've kind of broken them and enlarged them into the two sides. Okay, Running Springs, elementary. I'm already out of order here. So another elementary school here, Running Springs. The improvements here. So this is the first time that you'll see tonight a two-story building proposal. So no, we're not looking at taking over these houses next to the school. This is actually the second floor of classrooms that sit on top of this first floor of kinder classrooms. So just note that that's happening twice here on this plan. So what you see here.
This is a K-8 program, Andrea.
Oh, this is a K-8. Okay, that's why I had it in this order. I just have a mislabel. So here, I'll start over at admin. So admin and reconfigured space next door for a media center, existing classrooms getting treatment with modernization, new construction for kinder, since that's a specialty space, with the remainder of classrooms needed to fill out the balance on top of them, in that two-story construction. We have the Learning Resource Center centrally located at the center of the campus, after school and innovation lab as that pair we've talked about earlier, multi-purpose room with a lunch shelter, new two-story construction again with your visual and performing arts on the first floor, so that has those music rooms have access to the stage, and on the second floor, classrooms above. Moving further over, we have some more reconfiguration for a science lab and another large elective, and new construction for changing rooms, and complete with toilets, storage, and staff offices, with the pad for a future, potentially a future gym, and potential future field improvements. And lastly, just note some improvements to the ground plane for those outdoor collaboration areas. Oh, there it is, K-8 magnet. Okay, El Rancho Charter Middle School. This program was able to fit pretty nicely within the existing facilities. So there's actually not too much change proposed here at this point. So here's the existing diagram. The proposal really shows everything fitting within the existing facilities. So we're looking at modernization and one small improvement, a reconfiguration to 2 classrooms here to accommodate that Learning Resource Center, that suite of offices for student support. And there's one more site, Canyon Hills.
And we had a question on Running Springs that I just answered, Andrea, about would the 2-story buildings be prefabricated or modular? And an answer to that question is it's a possibility, but we have not yet determined the construction type for all the different buildings.
I just wanted to make one comment before we go on to Canyon Hills, because we've seen all the elementary schools now. As you may have seen, some of the kindergarten wings have moved. And a lot of people may say, well, they're already set up for kindergarten. Why would you move the kindergarten off to another side? Because we're integrating TK, preschool, and kindergarten now, and not all of that fits in the same box that 2 or 3 kindergarten classrooms may that currently exist. So in some cases, we're reinventing where kindergarten is placed in order to fit those programs and to make it conducive to all those grade levels, including preschool integration. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Yeah, and very often kindergarten is in a room that's a standard classroom without toilets and other amenities. And as much as possible, we're trying to follow California Department of Ed guidelines regarding the amenities that should be provided for a kindergarten, including toilets.
Workrooms, all that integration, correct.
There are square footage requirements that the California Department of Ed has that we're trying to maintain.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so going to Canyon Hills, here's the existing plan and only some minor changes on the proposed plan. And looking through the school site notes, I saw this bus parking may work better, may not get double parked so much if this parking were flipped. So keeping the staff parking or general public parking in its own drive lane and keep that separate from the bus parking. It's maybe a little hard to see, but in here in the quad, an incorporation of some more shade sails throughout the quad there and enhancements to the play structure and playgrounds. So this is one site that I'm sure you'll have more comments on, and we really look forward to hearing those and seeing how we can make this site best suit the program needs. That's all of our sites. Are there any questions coming through?
So let me, another question here. For Crescent to become a biomedical focused campus, there has to be consideration for biosafety cabinets, hoods that you see in sci-fi. Is there a consideration of veterinary focus? Then there has to be a vivarium. Yeah, definitely. If we're having a biomedical focus and there are chemicals or biosafety materials, we would have to store those per code requirements and fire marshal requirements. So there would be appropriate storage and rooms for the safety of those materials at the campus. And we're projecting that within the cost. Would anybody like to raise their hand with a question about one of the campuses? Again, these are a first pass at a potential vision for the sites. And we're definitely looking forward to everyone's input from the school site committees.
And while we're waiting, Mr. Rivera, did you want to talk about maybe just some procedures and some recommended guidelines for those site committee meetings and what the district recommends as part of kind of our ongoing safety program to maintain that our schools and our staff stay safe in the pandemic?
So if we were back during a normal situation, we would have these beautiful boards stationed throughout the facility where staff can look at it in a staff lounge and also have our parents look at it. And we would get input, direct input, and sometimes these boards would get a lot of attention from our community. In this current environment, we can't do that. So we have to practice social distancing. So we're going to be working with our team with LPA of how we can do that, how we could provide this information, possibly electronically, so that way people can access it and view it and study it. But we cannot, we have to deter any crowds and creating any crowds in our campuses, because we need to comply with the county health ordinances of social distancing, people wearing masks. So we're gonna come up with some solutions that you can have access to information, but we need to do it in complying with the health guidelines. So we're going to have a conversation how we can best do this, because this is a new wrinkle that we haven't encountered before in facility planning about how do we provide this access but still keep people safe.
Great, thanks, David. We had another question about Canyon Hills and about the need to meet with that school site committee personally. And yes, we definitely plan to do that. We understand that that's one of the campuses. We know a little bit less about the program because there are many different things that happen there. So we are proposing that for campuses like that where we need to gather more information, maybe even prior to the one-on-ones, we can schedule a meeting with that school site committee. So we'll be interacting with the school site principal to determine a good time for everybody to get together virtually and share some of more of the needs. We do have the principal's questionnaire, and we do have the information that we learned on the site walk regarding the modernization needs. Where we could use some additional information on Canyon Hills is where are the program deficiencies in terms of the operation of the facility. Now, Scott, did you want to add anything else there?
Here's a question that we.
Go ahead, Scott.
I think you covered it. Thank you.
Okay.
I see another question coming in that I'd like to address to the district. Is there another way to submit questions to specific school sites other than through school site committees? So from the district, who should we say is the point person if someone has general questions on the master plan diagrams?
I think that's a really good question, and I can work with our communications department and Mr. Rivera on creating a way to get questions that are maybe on a form, a Google form or something like that, that could be added along. We want the school site committee to see it. Maybe we have a specific chat or a specific Google form for each school site committee that they can feel comfortable stating those thoughts without having to include the entire group on this call.
Yeah, would that be on the district's website and under the facilities tab?
We would have, yeah, we would have to see how we would roll that out, but it's possible that it would be accessible per the website. That's probably best. But I'll talk to Hannah, who's our manager of the communications department, and she'll be able to kind of help us with that.
Great.
Hannah's on. Hannah, do you have any ideas on that, or we can talk about that later? I don't want to.
Yeah, we can talk about it later. We're running late already, but definitely we can get something that's very accessible and easy for the public to be able to submit their comments and feedback and questions.
So more to come. We'll send something out via our website.
And there's two last questions. With declining enrollment, has there been talk of moving Canyon Hills to a smaller site to provide more space and updated facilities for their population? Now, Scott or David, you want to take that question?
With our enrollment projections from our demographer, we just received the most current study. So we've analyzed what the projections are, current projections plus projections to 10 years. So we're analyzing all that data. And by the time that this report's going to be finalized, that will be built into this projections of how to best utilize it. And that's what I was referring to, that we need to update these every 5 years because trends change and we want to make sure that we capture that. So then that way, when we're constructing or modernizing, that we're addressing the needs of the site and the district, you know, long-term, not just short-term. So this is something that we're going to continually monitor and keep updating the report every 5 years.
Great, thank you. And then there's another question that says, will there be access to the track between Crescent and Orange Pre-K to get down for athletic fields for different sports? And I think, yes, we do want to try to connect those fields into more of a continuum, as this would be a K-8 campus.
We know the community wants to have access to their fields. We want them to have access to the fields. We've built some beautiful fields. And so everything that we're going to be focused on is going to see how we can provide access to our community, so that way they can benefit from the, you know, when our students are not using the fields.
Okay, Andrea, we don't have any more questions. You want to go to the closing slides? I know we're going a little bit over time here.
this is it.
So we encourage, everybody that is on the call today from the community, if you would like to participate on a school site committee, please contact your site principal and they can let you know when the meetings will be occurring at your individual campuses. Like I said, we are looking to have input and modify these plans to be specific to the needs of each of the campuses. And with that, David, I will turn it over to yourself or Dr. Hansen to make any closing statements.
Dr. Hansen, is there anything you would like to add at this time?
No, just I want to thank the team for this very thorough presentation, and I'm really impressed with the work that's been completed. Although there are conceptual designs and there may be some changes, I think very thorough site maps of each of the schools and really comprehensive planning has been going on. And I look forward to the process moving forward, going out to the school sites and getting even more input. And I want to thank our Board of Education, who's been on listening intently to all the questions and to the presentation. I want to thank them for their participation and look forward to our next meeting. So unless one of the board members wants to say anything in closing, you're more than welcome to. But I just wanted to thank them for participating and also thank the staff and LPA for their outstanding work.
Yeah, what I would like to add in closing would be, there's been literally thousands of hours of work that's been put into this by a multitude of people, a lot of dedication, a lot of work working with the site. And I appreciate LPA's efforts in everything that they provided us and the thoroughness. I appreciate everyone who is participating tonight, parents and community members that attended, and that you are invested and interested in about our schools. I appreciate your attendance and thank you for your input. And we will provide access to you so that way we can hear from you and in a safe manner, so that way we can get your input and then provide that information to our board. Thank you for attending.
Yeah, thank you everybody and have a good evening. And if you're interested, attend the other town halls over the next couple days and next week. We look forward to more of your input. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.